Hi folks and welcome back to the channel. So today we're having a yeast special. Now lots of you have been asking this question numbers of times. In fact, it wears me out, keep replying. And the problem is, it's this stuff, dried yeast. You want to know how much dried yeast to use, because my recipes are always with fresh yeast. We've got dried yeast and we've got fresh yeast. So which is best out of these two? I will tell you straight away. Now, for weighing these products up, this is 500 grams of dried yeast, and that is 1,000 grams, okay? If a recipe says 7 grams of dried yeast, it's 14 grams of fresh yeast, okay? That is simple. So you can see what they're like together. This, obviously, most of the bakers will probably be using this. And again, some may actually use dried yeast. It's their choice. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to use these and the reasons behind them. And one of these two is better than the other. Now I'm going to show you exactly what I did. There is going to be chapters along in the video, so you can actually jump to whichever part you want. But I'll show you this. This is exactly what we're going to be making. So this is what we're going to be making. One of these loaves has got fresh yeast in it, and one of these loaves has got dried yeast in it. Can you tell the difference? One of them has. At the end of the video, we're going to cut them open and find out which is best. What tastes better? If there's any taste or if there's anything different inside this loaf, we'll know. So I've got my instructions in front of me. So we're going to go straight through with you. So first of all, we got moisture content. Well, as a rule, this contains 75% water, and that's fresh yeast. That contains around about 10% water. Yes, I know it's dried, but apparently it's 10% water. News to me. I'm learning something. Like you guys are learning, I'm learning as well. Both the fresh and the dried yeast come from the same manufacturer. Now you can obtain these off of eBay. I believe that it's on Amazon as well. I can't be sure about Amazon, but I know damn well it is actually on eBay. So how long does dried yeast last for? Well, they give you a sell-by date on here, but I can tell you now, it'll probably last 2 or 3 years. Fresh yeast, very short life. A month out the fridge, and you can leave it in a freezer forever and a day. And just scrape it off as you go along. But it is better using it as it's fresh, because if you're not using fresh yeast, then you ought to be using your dry. Activation, what the master bakers say, generalizing, all right? That's before they invented this one, because obviously, if you don't realize it, dried yeast has actually gone along from being pretty slow to pretty quick these days. Now, activating dried yeast, very simple. You can throw it straight in the dough as it is. There's no rules. Now, most bakers will tell you, you need to activate this. And that's basically taking half your water, half your flour, and just adding your yeast in. Mix it around in the machine or in a bowl and just leave it on the side until it starts bubbling. Now, I have showed you in one of my videos previously how to make a flavor. And that's all we're doing. We're really starting this off into making yeast. Okay, you could say you're putting the water back into the dried. That's exactly what you're doing, really. As for this one, you can just throw it straight in and use it. So it saves you a lot of time. But once again, if you do want flavour in your bread, pre-mix this up with your flour in the water and it'll give it a beautiful flavour. Availability. Dried yeast is as common as water. You'll find it anywhere. But bear this in mind. Each product varies. Now I have only used this one. I have used some in the past, which have been pretty awful. But this one, I can only say it's good because I've been using it. Now that's the one I'd be going for every time. There is an Italian brand, which numbers of people have used and says really, really good as well. So there you go. As for fresh yeast, well, apparently, if this is true or not, I don't know, Tesco's is selling fresh yeast, but you will be paying for it, as someone pointed out. Generally speaking, there isn't much difference between price of fresh and dried yeast. It's around about the same, okay? Now this is available from your local baker. You pop down, if you've got any real bakers on the high street, by the way, you should be able to get this off them, okay? Pop in and say you'd like to buy some fresh yeast from them. And if they don't sell it, don't go back to them ever again. Because believe me, that is available from every bakery shop up and down in the country. Small bakers will sell this to you. They'll sell you the flour as well to make your bread. They want business, so believe me, they will sell this to you if you want it. Small bakers are dying by the wayside. And believe me, and so are the sourdough producers, are dying left, right and centre. And you can guess why? Supermarkets. So let's move on and have a look exactly what you get. This is fresh yeast. Now, I've kept it out of the way, so we're not, because this is horrible stuff really. And if you've never seen fresh yeast before, this is fresh yeast. Okay? And it smells like yeast. See? It breaks down. And that's fresh yeast. This is your dried yeast. And this is what your dried yeast looks like. It doesn't smell of much really. And that's it. Millions and millions of little grains. That's why they say you're better off adding water to it. Because this, as I said earlier, this fresh yeast has got 75% water in it. And this has got 10% water. So the interesting thing now is I made up some bread this morning. So I'm going to go exactly through what I did. I was making up 3 loaves of bread of each. It's just because my recipe that I'm putting down below the video is actually the same recipe as which you can use. So you can try this recipe out for yourself using fresh or dried yeast, whichever the case may be. It is down below the video. It is a standard recipe of mine which I use non-stop. Every day of the week I use this same recipe. First and foremost, before we start, everything I did was in a controlled temperature. So the flour, water and the bowl was spot on, all right? So we know exactly where we're going with this. I've made the recipe up. As you can see on the table there, I've got 2 recipes made up and in each bowl is exactly the same, apart from one has fresh yeast and one has dried yeast. Now mix them in the machine for 10 minutes only, all right? So we know exactly where we're going with this. Now for our first proof, now if you know what that is, you've mixed it and then you chuck it into a bowl and you're leaving it, all right? So that's what you call your first proof. Now fresh yeast took 25 minutes and dried yeast took 30 minutes. But the dried yeast could have done with a little bit longer, to be honest. You've cut it up, you've molded it up into your tins. Now how long do you think the fresh yeast was going to take? Well, if you've watched a lot of my videos, you're already going to know the answer to this. Around 60 minutes. Hey, that's not bad. Now the dried yeast, I'm afraid, folks, took 75 minutes. I mean, we're talking about an extra 15 minutes longer to get that full proof. And that is exactly what the problem is. So let's have a look at these 2 loaves of bread. So what is the difference between these 2 loaves of bread? One's got fresh yeast in and one's got dried yeast in it. Now you can't really tell anything different from them, can you? They look the same, they've raised the same. The only difference is this one here has pulled in the oven, all right? And this one didn't pull as well. Now you're getting it, aren't you? See? So this one looks to be slightly taller, all right? But not much in it. But this one's pulled in the oven and this one didn't pull as well. Okay? So now I think you're getting it, aren't you? Yeah. So we're going to look at this loaf first. Chop him open. So, shall I take you out of your misery? Yeah. This is the loaf with the yeast in. Fresh yeast. And obviously, this is dried yeast. So one of the main things we need to know, is there any difference in the feel? Not really. Can you smell any difference? No, they look fairly much the same, don't they? So let's cut one off and have a look inside. And there's the inside of this one. And there's the inside of this one. And now I'm starting to see the difference between the two. So generally speaking, there is a big difference between dried yeast and fresh yeast. And straight away from the inside of these two loaves, I can see the difference. Can you see the difference between them? And I'm almost betting you should be able to, because there is a big difference between these two loaves. Now from smelling them, they smell exactly the same. But if you look very carefully at the texture of this one, you can see the difference. This has got fresh yeast in it, and look at the holes inside. Okay? Now look at the dried yeast one. All right? And that's both together. And this one looks a bit whiter to this one. That feels fresher. And you know, I've just cut them. That one there, this is fresh yeast. That feels a lot fresher than the dried yeast. And yet from inside, and then look at those holes. They are slightly different. It's more what I call compact against this one. So the question is, can we taste any difference? Oh yeah, you can see the difference, can't you? Look, than the fresh yeast. Now you might not be able to see it very well, but believe me, I can see the difference. So I'm going to taste the dry yeast first. Tastes very nice. Now the one with fresh yeast. There's definitely a difference in flavour. And I can tell you now without any shadow of a doubt, if I was buying a loaf of bread, which one do you think I would choose? Well, by the flavour, it's this one. Can you guess? It's fresh yeast. The dry yeast one, though it tastes very nice, it doesn't taste as nice as the fresh yeast. Summing this all up. So in my verdict, which one would I choose? It's going to be fresh yeast every time. And this is why I'm just telling you folk at home. If you can get hold of fresh yeast, get hold of it. Don't mess around with this dried stuff. It's convenient and all that, but the flavour is not there. It's what I call a retarded loaf. It takes a lot longer. And you gather that I'm only talking about 15 minutes. In the winter months, when you've got the cold weather, you really do want a yeast that's going to move a bit. These two loaves are very much the same. And it's going to be down to you folk at home if you're going to use fresh or dried. But I personally will recommend fresh every time. If I want to slow my doughs down and make it a more what I call traditional loaf, then use dried yeast because it will work slower. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did so, please subscribe and please share. And we'll see you again very shortly on the Crazy Baker channel. Laters!